Well, welcome to our roundtable. This is we hope that you all got a chance to watch the amazing documentary featuring our star here, Dr. Dale Bredesen, and many others. And it's called Memories for Life. And we had a link for a short period of time for people to get a chance to watch it. And I'll speak for myself to say I was so moved and found it so good and compelling. And we're glad to have some wonderful panelists on today to serve really as a roundtable and a Q&A, particularly for practitioners and coaches. We know some of you on this call now are already trained in ReCODE 2.0, and some of you are not. You may just be curious and trying to figure out whether you want to add this special modality or special niche to your practice. And we, of course, say a resounding yes to that, come aboard. But first, we're going to talk for, we'll probably be here for about an hour. And without further ado, my name's Chris Coward. I'm the VP of Coaching for Apollo Health. And I'm just going to have the panelists introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Bredesen. You just want to say hi in a few words, Dale?
Yeah. Hi, Dale Bredesen, long-term neuroscientist and neurologist. And actually, we are just beginning the first precision medicine program for neurodegenerative diseases, which is at the Pacific Neuroscience Institute in Santa Monica. So very enthusiastic about that. Thank you, Christine.
Yeah, excellent. And we also have Dr. Daniel LaPerriere from Louisville, Colorado. Yes,
yeah,
practicing ReCODE 2.0 physician.
Yeah, hi everybody. Glad to be here. So I'm a family medicine trained doctor who's been specializing in functional medicine over the past 12 to 14 years, and have been working with clients with cognitive decline really over the past 7 to 8 years, and more intensely over the past 4 years now. And that's really the 90% of my practice now is working with ReCODE and pre-code clients, and it's really fulfilling and enjoyable, and feel honored to be doing this work. So hopefully I can share some things with you.
Beautiful. And we also have Dr. Howard Hinden, and he's holding the seat for the dental aspects of ReCODE. And Dr. Hinden, you want to say a few words?
Sure. So I have a practice outside of New York City. I've been a dentist for, believe it or not, 57 years. Started when I was about 3. And I've been an acupuncturist, certified acupuncturist since about 1970. So I've always been involved in things like nutrition, looking at the root cause of problems. And I'm also the founder and president of the APMD, American Academy of Physiological Medicine and Dentistry, and the Foundation for Airway Health. And when I came across Dr. Bredesen's work, love it, because it brings all the things that I think are so important, putting it together for something that's really important. And I had a mother who suffered for 7 years with Alzheimer's before she passed away at the age of 99. So I'm so happy to be here and be part of this.
And Howard, if I'm sorry, before we go on, I just have to make one comment, if I may, because I just received an email a couple days ago from a professor at one of the leading universities in the world. I won't name the university, but she was writing to inform me that we should be aware that she's discovered that what's going on in the mouth can actually have an impact on brain health. And she has one case where there were some abscesses in the jaw, and she said this was a remarkable and accidental discovery, and that we should we should be thinking now about oral health. So I had to let her know that I just got back from a meeting of 1,000 dentists led by you, that is Collaboration Cures, that has been talking about this for years. So it's interesting that so many of these things are being rediscovered by various universities.
That's great.
Excellent. So next up, we have Rachel Nakwacha. She is a ReCODE health coach and works in Dr. Dan's practice. Want to say hi, Rachel?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm Rachel. You did great with my name, Chris. Killed it.
practice. She teed me up
Yeah.
this morning. The K is not silent.
Yeah, so I work directly with Dr. Dan. So I've been with him a little over 2 years, but I've been in the coaching world for about 8 to 10 years, doing different things in fitness and nutrition. I worked with cancer exercise as well for a while. So I've taken really my professional experience, also my personal experience. I have multiple members in my family I've lost through Alzheimer's. And even though that wasn't the reason I came upon ReCODE, I'm really grateful now that it's an option. Then I also have gone through sort of chronic health concerns since I was a teenager, which really inspired me to become a health coach. So I like to use a combination of my education and personal experience in my coaching. And I'm really grateful that this is available for people, bringing hope in this area. I think it's really massive, and I'm really excited to be a part of it.
Beautiful. Thank you for being on. And last but definitely not least, we have Julie Gregory.
Hi, everybody. I'm Julie Gregory. I'm the Chief Health Liaison at Apollo Health, and I help create their educational material. I'm also the president and founder of ApoE4.info. And I came to this field in an effort to save my own life. 11 years ago, I learned I carried 2 copies of the ApoE4 allele, and I was exhibiting symptoms at that time. And there was no such thing as a Bredesen protocol then. So I threw all of my energy and all of my effort into saving my own life after my neurologist wished me good luck and sent me home. And 11 years later, I'm still here and I'm thriving. My cognition has never been better. Along the way, I met this wonderful fellow named Dr. Dale Bredesen, and I'm here to tell you he's the real deal. I love this film. It absolutely re-inspired me, and I'm so excited to be here so that we can all talk about it.
Excellent. Well, we're glad you're here. You're holding down an important part of this conversation. Well, so I want to open it up to get reactions, comments, questions from those of you who have watched the documentary, and even from those of you who are intending to watch the documentary, but showed up hoping some questions will get answered. It's wide open, and I'm monitoring the chat. And if we don't get anything, we'll have you, Dr. Bredesen, kind of give some grounding to the conversation, and so we're not just waiting.
I was just going to say, I've done several Q&As where this screened in North Carolina and screened in New York, and then Know We Well as a group had a group screening last weekend. So I've had a number of these, and the questions have been very good. And of course, one of the ones that's a common one is, should I get tested? Because don't I want to avoid knowing about this? And I think this is a very common problem, as I think everybody knows. When the human genome was sequenced, the genome that they sequenced was James Watson, who originally proposed the double helix structure way back in the early 50s. And he said, there's only one gene. I do not want to know the answer. I do not want to know about ApoE because there's nothing you can do about it. And as we all know, and as Julie is living proof, nothing could be further from the truth. So my argument is that everybody who is 40 years of age or older should get a cognoscopy, just like we all know when we turn 50, get a colonoscopy. And my wife and I, when we turned 50, although she's a little younger than I am, but when we were, and I was in my early 50s and we did this, we decided to do his and hers colonoscopies on Valentine's Day, as we thought, okay, here's a good way, let's just get it over with, and then we go out and have a nice lunch together. And so we realized, a cognoscopy is much more benign than a colonoscopy. It's easy. You get some blood tests that are critical, and you get an online cognitive screening. And really, that's all you need, unless you're already having symptoms. And then you want to include an MRI with volumetrics. But the reality is we should all know, and there are now better and better genetic tests and better epigenetic tests. And we've started our randomized controlled trial. We had a very successful proof of concept trial that's freely available online that we published last year in Journal of Alzheimer's Disease. Now we have an ongoing randomized controlled trial at 6 different sites around the country. Everybody should know, and we are looking at epigenetics. We are looking at the new blood tests like phospho-tau 181 and neurofilament light and A beta 42:40 ratio. So this is going to make it easier and easier and easier for all of us to find out where we stand and to make sure that we never get it. The reality is, with the work that Dr. LaPerriere is doing, and Rachel and Dr. Hinden and Julie, everybody, and Christine, this disease is becoming optional. If you simply don't wait until the late stages, just get on prevention or get on earliest reversal. We see people get better all the time. The tough ones are the ones that have waited. The good news is there is about a 10-year period with subjective cognitive impairment, SCI, before you ever get MCI. So get on prevention or get in as early as possible. Please don't wait until dementia. And Christine, I know you've got some questions, so let's get back to those.
Yeah, we have a couple great fun questions, and this first one is still with you. What efforts went into filming it? What were the gifts and challenges behind the scenes? And were there any messages that Dr. Bredesen wanted to be included in it that are worth mentioning now? I'm assuming that means wanted to be included that might not have been included.
Yeah, such a good point, because there was this was filmed earlier, and they took out pretty much everything and just basically said, oh, it's just lifestyle. And I said, no, that's just simply not accurate. Yes, lifestyle is very important, but it's not everything. So what happened was that the NHK, which is the CNN of Japan, and Japan has listed, the government has decided years ago, their number one challenge, it's not, atomic issues, it's not loss of fish. Their number one issue is cognitive decline because, of course, of the graying of the population in Japan. And so I've been over there on their 60 Minutes a couple of times, and they decided that they wanted to do something about what we're doing, what's going on. Unfortunately, of course, the first thing they do is go to the neurologists in Japan, who say, well, we want to give drugs, and we don't want to say something that's new and different, and we don't want it to be provocative or forward-thinking. And so a lot of stuff got taken out, which really, I think, really took away from what we can actually do, which was unfortunate. Fortunately, after that appeared initially, one of the patients who has done very well, who is from New York, said, you're missing key parts here. I'm going to, with my own family, support the editing of the original one. So the real challenge, and you heard it on the film, they did keep pieces of negativity. So they specifically said, we want to have people talk about negative things because we don't want to have this sound like we're just championing one side or the other. So you heard the Alzheimer's Association, which has no good results, talking about how that they didn't believe. You heard Dr. Schneider from USC, who writes. He's interestingly and ironically, he's the one who wrote the article that showed that people who went on Aricept and Namenda did worse than people who went on nothing. So I think there are a lot of people, let's say, in the mainstream that are still skeptical. So, okay, we'll continue to publish data. We'll continue to show that what started in the lab many years ago has been translated. And of course, there's room for improvement. But the challenge was really the pushback and the editing, and the fact that here's the key part. NHK had the final say about what was allowed to be shown. So they took out some of the best discussions about here's why this works, here's more on paper about how it works. They took all that out. They said, we want to have equal positive and negative, which I think was unfortunate for the many people in need. But at least it takes a step forward to showing that this is possible.
Yeah, well said. So I'm going to lump a couple of these questions together because there's a few people asking, so A, they didn't get to see it. and they want their clients to see it and patients and so on. I don't know the specifics around the rollout. I do know this was a special opportunity for our
Yeah.
community to see it for free, but this is going to be a movie that will be on screens and they'll be selling tickets for, and there's people behind it that are intending to make
Right.
money from it.
Yeah, so
So
it comes out
I just
November
don't know the
15th.
plan. Yeah.
Yeah, so it comes out. So I have some details from them. It comes out on November 15th. It will be streaming. It'll be on Amazon Prime. It'll be on Tubi. It'll be on several. It'll be on Apple Plus. So it'll be on several of these streaming. And all you have to do is you can either search within those for the title, or you can go to the website. So there's a website for Memories for Life, Reversing Alzheimer's, narrated by Michael Bublé and all that. You go to their website, and that will direct you to how to get to these. So November 15th, it'll be streaming.
Yeah. Great. Good.
There was also an email, I think, that you can email at the same site, but if you wanted before November 15th to host a showing, I guess you can contact them and actually host a showing in your own town, city, whatever, and you can reach out to them and do that. So that's just another option that's out there that I saw.
Yeah. And I think by October 31st, that dries up, and then they're going all into the November 15th debut. So Mary is asking, we'll go with this question first because it's on the more clinical side first, and then she has one sort of about the business side. Has this program been studied for other brain conditions such as ADHD with younger participants? Either Dr. Dan or Dr. Dale want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, so let me just say that we this is why we just set up down at the Pacific Neuroscience Institute. We've just started the first precision medicine program for all neurodegenerative diseases, so that people with ALS and macular degeneration and Lewy body and frontotemporal dementia and on can begin to come in and look at these things more deeply. So here's the thing: the approach that we take is designed for people with cognitive decline associated with Alzheimer's. It does work with Lewy body disease and vascular dementia. We've seen this again and again, but there's a lot. You have to basically adapt it for other things. That's the idea. Now, you brought up a really good point. ADHD is not a neurodegenerative disease. It is more of a developmental condition. However, there are some things in common. Some of the same molecular signaling occurs in ADHD as occurs in Alzheimer's. It's just that in Alzheimer's, you actually have the degenerative component. In ADHD, you don't. So years ago, we tried to create a fruit fly model of Alzheimer's, which we called Alzflimers. And when we did that, we inserted genes that were appropriate with Alzheimer's, but the young flies did not get Alzheimer's. They got ADHD, and it was very interesting. It was very classic. They had tremendous increase in their movements. They were very sensitive to carbs. You give them carbs and they're running all over the place. It responded to medications that work with ADHD. So there are some common molecular signals, and I believe that we will be able to help people with ADHD, and also, by the way, autism, which is almost a polar opposite of ADHD when you look at the molecular signaling. So I do think that these things are help. These are all part of what functional medicine and precision medicine are addressing. And Dr. LaPerriere, I don't know if you want to talk about, are you seeing children with ADHD or adults with ADHD that you are treating?
So I don't have any children in my practice. Most of my clients start at 18 or older if it's for other general things as well. I have treated in the past some children with autism. ADHD, I do have a couple adults with ADHD. Unfortunately, the couple that I have aren't really, they're sort of more of my general regular medicine clients who aren't interested in doing a lot of lifestyle exploration into those areas and adjustments. So I don't have a lot of experience there. Now, I have had clients with other neurodegenerative conditions, Lewy body, frontotemporal dementia, who I have worked with as we started making it clear that we know that the best evidence for the work that you've done, Dale, is that for, neurodegeneration related to Alzheimer's dementia, but that definitely using this approach is not going to be harmful by any means, and that with some adaptations, like you said, we can get some benefits and slowing of things there, and have had some fairly good, I mean, there's still been some progression, but having those individuals be more stable for some time. So
Yeah,
Can I have 2 cents?
sure.
So about 12 years ago, at one of our early meetings, we had Dr. Stephen Sheldon, who was head of pediatric sleep medicine at Lurie's Children's Hospital in Northwestern. And he said that up to 60 or more % of children with ADHD really have a sleep problem. And he said, because ADHD is really a syndrome. It's not really a disease, it's a syndrome with a whole family of things that children express. And if you look at children who are sleep deprived, they have exactly the same syndrome. And he advocated that every sleepy child should at least have a sleep test before they were put on medication. So we have been dealing with that. We've been looking at, my daughter-in-law does pediatric dentistry in our office. We get children who come in who are having behavior problems. And not everybody, but if you identify the sleep problem, and then these kids who have a sleep problem almost always have a sugar problem because they're tired and they need something to perk them up. And what's great about the ReCODE program, it doesn't just pick out 1 or 2 things, it puts everything together. And I think that, there's so much work to do to just try to prevent Alzheimer's, but this same program I know can be used for so many other things.
Yeah, that's very hopeful. So let's see here. Dell is asking about neuroplasticity and the how much of that plays into this. He has an example of his mother thriving with a high quality of life for 22 years at symptomatic level, living to over 100 years old. And you're thinking it's mostly neuroplasticity. What are your thoughts there?
So that's exactly what this is. So the way that our research unfolded was to show that in these degenerative diseases, the idea is that all of the major neurodegenerative diseases are mismatches between supply and demand for different neural subsystems. So you have neuroplasticity, which is critical in Alzheimer's. That is exactly what you're losing. And APP is this interesting signaling molecule that can go back and support positive neuroplasticity, making and keeping synapses. But the same molecule can go into a protective mode, which is when you make the amyloid. And this now gives you 4 different peptides that are all supporting protection. So you'll go back and forth between, it's almost like your house. You're either working on things or you're battening down the hatches because a hurricane's coming. If you're in the middle of a hurricane, you're not doing an add-on to your house. You're closing everything up. You're getting, you're trying to stay away. And that's exactly what APP is doing. It's either building or it's protecting. And so what we see as Alzheimer's is a chronic protection mode where you've got things coming in like pathogens, you've got toxin exposure, you have metabolic changes, the sleep changes that Howard was just mentioning, all of these things that change your neuroplasticity. And so you're losing the positive side of the neuroplasticity. Now, there's a separate sub area with sub network, which is involved in controlling movements. It's essentially a motor modulation. That's the one that goes awry in Parkinson's. Then you have a motor power subnetwork. That's the one that goes awry in ALS. But the idea is each of these is its own subnetwork, and it's got its own supply and its own demand, and of course, its own genetic background. So absolutely, neuroplasticity and Alzheimer's are one.
Yeah. So I'm going to go to a question that I want to have start with Julie on it, and then we'll turn to Rachel to finish it off. And it's from Melanie, and it's a question that's a lot of people wonder about. You know, what are the biggest challenges to sustain protocol compliance? And the part for Rachel here is, how are Apollo trained coaches addressing them? But Julie this is one of her gifts, is that she makes the protocol friendly, and develops resources and all sorts of things to support people on their journey. So Julie, I'd love to hear you hit that one.
That's a really great question. Chris, can you pull up the B7 slide?
Yes.
I think this slide kind of makes the protocol feel friendly and approachable.
Oh, you know what?
Maybe we don't have
it.
Oh,
Okay.
shoot.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that we don't.
That's okay. Maybe Lance can put up the B7 graphic.
Yeah.
And it kind of brings neuroplasticity front and center.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the protocol can feel overwhelming to people when they're first starting it. And so we help create this graphic that we call the Bredesen 7 or B7 that shows the 7 foundational strategies that treat all of the Alzheimer's subtypes. And yes, it feels overwhelming at first, but when you look at this, it's like, oh, I can do this. Like the Bredesen protocol, 36 holes, it just feels overwhelming, but I can clean up my diet, I can exercise, I can optimize sleep, and so on. And so all of these strategies alone create neuroplasticity, but when you put them together, there's a super powerful synergy that occurs. And really, the longer you do the protocol, the more it just becomes your lifestyle. And it doesn't feel like you're sacrificing. I'm gaining so much every day. My overall health, like Rachel mentioned, I had a lot of chronic health conditions before I developed cognitive decline. And lo and behold, when I began practicing the protocol, they pretty much all fell away. So I've never been healthier. You couldn't pay me to go back to eating sugar and gluten and the food that I was eating before. You couldn't pay me to not exercise or optimize sleep or manage stress. The rewards of living this lifestyle, I think, you see them every single day, and they reinforce your desire to continue with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rachel, do you want to talk a little bit about undergoing a protocol like this involves behavior change and changing and shifting some habits, and that's where coaching is so helpful. And I know there's some questions too about, what are the career opportunities, sort of the business side of that, and I'm assuming for practitioners and coaches. So I'm sort of saving that. Those answers to that could be a good wrap up. But I'll turn over to you, Rachel.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm like losing my voice already. Yeah, so initially someone mentioned like, what are the challenges? And the biggest thing I think we see for a lot of people is it's a lot, right? It is a lot of new information. It's a lot of change. They do have to change their entire life a lot of times. We have people coming in who are at all stages. Some have been kind of focused on their health for longer than others, or some people it might be at the beginning. I really try to have a lot of compassion and empathy for people. And I think that helps a lot, is just recognizing, that whatever they're feeling is valid, and letting them know that it's okay to feel overwhelmed or feel like it's a lot. And then as coaches, particularly in this versus other types of coaching, I would say I do a lot more education than I would in other types of coaching. So focusing on, really breaking down the steps. Like I spend a lot of time reviewing the nutrition with them and breaking it down in a very simple way. And then looking at what are the particular things for that individual that are getting in the way. And then the other thing is really helping people focus on like 1 or 2 things at a time, and reminding them that they don't need to do like I mean, of course, we want them doing all of the Bredesen 7. We want them implementing the whole protocol, but not everyone is going to go from 0 to 100 in like 2 weeks. And a lot of people come in having the expectation that they should do that. So really helping them focus on like one main area. Usually we focus very, very heavily on nutrition, then start doing, exercise. And then of course, Dr. Dan is working with them on the detoxification and supplementation at the same time. But if we can focus very heavily on just that one area, then they don't feel like so overwhelmed by, oh, I have to implement 7 new strategies in every area of my life. So that definitely helps a lot, I've noticed. And then really relying on our coaching skills, which is, motivational interviewing and helping people understand that they're their best expert. I really try to take an approach of, yes, we know the information and we can help guide you and lead you, but you know what's best for you. And at the end of the day, you should make decisions that are related to your goals. So that takes away any sort of like force or shame if they, don't do something correct all the time. And then leaning into like failure too. I loved in the documentary how one of the participants said, like, doing it even when you're failing is really important. And she said, I did this exercise 300 times or something. And that really stuck out to me because that's really big. It's just reminding people, even when it feels like you're, failing, you're still doing the protocol. That's actually all part of learning. And now that's all part of the protocol. So those are the kind of main areas we focus on.
Yeah. Thank you. And,
And by the way,
by
the way, that particular person is doing great still. And she's been through a number of challenges. She's still doing well today.
She's failed well.
She's done
failed forward,
failed,
as they say in
up.
corporate America.
Yeah. I want to just make one comment on this. So when we see people who are saying, well, I've been on it for several months and why am I not better? And why are you telling me that other people do get better? The 2 common things that we see are, number one, they don't do the 7 that Julie talked about. They do 1 or 2 of them, but then they, okay, but I want to know what's the thing. I was told on the internet that if you put a crystal on your forehead, it makes all brain diseases better. All these crazy ideas that don't have any sort of data. We have data for this. We've published it. So starting with getting those things right, and it's not that easy. I agree. But getting your optimal metabolic status and getting your optimal exercise, and there's a lot that can be done. But the second piece that people will fail, and they'll do some of the basics, but then they won't look at the specifics. There are people where, as Julie well knows, there could be a tick-borne infection that hadn't been discovered before. There could be mycotoxin exposure that hadn't been discovered before. And by the way, we had a woman, I've just submitted a paper. It's just actually being submitted this week, documenting over 10 years of sustained improvement. And here was the interesting takeaway. First of all, that tells you that what we're addressing is actually the things that are driving, because you wouldn't stay better that long with medications, certainly don't do it. You have to get at the root causes to keep people better that long. But what was interesting, almost everybody had a secondary decline because there was something that had either been missed or that had been added. In one person, it turned out to be, after 6 years of doing great, she started to backslide, as we often see. But so she had sleep apnea that had been undiagnosed. She addressed that, she got better. The second thing is she actually had some new mycotoxin exposure. And turned out she had some new leaks in the house. They had to be addressed. And then third, and interestingly, she had a sinus infection that turned out to be Cryptococcus lawrencii, which is a rare cause of sinus infection. But she had 3 reasons for less energy, more inflammation, just what we see. When those were addressed, boom, she went right back to doing well again. So we see this all the time. If you're getting at the things that are causing it, you should get better.
Yeah. So you brought up something that is related to a question we have in the chat from Mary, and this is for you, Dr. Hinden, about dentists that treat sleep apnea. Can it be treated with a CPAP in most cases? And can you speak to mouth breathing and the trend around mouth taping?
Okay. So number one, nobody spends as much time with any practitioner during a year as patients do in a dental office. They just go for routine care. That's usually 2 hours where they can be given information that can help change their life. So the 4 treatments for sleep apnea are CPAP, oral appliance, surgery, and weight loss. Those are the only 4 known beneficial treatments. And sometimes people need a combination. Each one of them has benefits and failures. People don't want to be attached to a machine and tangled up with a hose. And the important thing to know, sleep apnea is categorized as mild, moderate, and severe. Anything above 5 is apnea. 5 to 15 is mild. If somebody has really high score, 30, and you say, great, we gave them a CPAP or something, and they cut it in half down to 15, everybody say, look how good we're doing, but you don't have medical benefits unless you're under 5. And so that if you get a CPAP and you're doing better, but you're not under 5, then you should look at something else. Most important thing is, kids at 3 years old that are going to have a problem when they grow up. These are kids who are mouth breathers. Nasal breathing is completely different than mouth breathing. You breathe through your nose, you produce nitric oxide, you get vasodilation, you get better blood flow through all parts of your body. And you can recognize a child, you can do orthodontic expansion. This notion that you don't do orthodontic treatment till 12 is ridiculous, because at age 3, you put an expander, in 4 months, you've changed the whole shape and their development. And so that can be made, you can make a difference. And I think the most important thing is collaboration. Each patient needs different people on their team, and working together, because the things that I was doing as we developed collaboration cures, working with physical therapists and speech language pathologists, we get so much better results, because then we're not missing something. Like you mentioned mycotoxins before. We had a problem. We had a patient who was doing so well, and their sleep apnea was under control, and all of a sudden their sleep got worse, and it had nothing to do with the treatment wasn't good. They just moved into a house that had mold, and it was right around the bedroom. So now they were having exposure every night. But as we become experts and we begin to think going into a funnel, we don't think in broader terms. We don't say, what am I missing? And that's what the great part about looking for the 36 holes. If you always ask yourself, what am I missing? You have an opportunity to do a lot more for your patients.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to take it in a different direction, and this is for you, Dr. Bredesen. Yatan says, I've read about psilocybin having high potential in helping Alzheimer's and other neurodegenerative disease. Are you looking at fungi beyond lion's mane?
Yeah, it's a great point. And so there is actually a program. So as I mentioned earlier, we are creating this first precision medicine program for neurodegenerative diseases specifically, which is at Pacific Neuroscience Institute, which is led by neurosurgeon Dr. Dan Kelly. And they have a program there specifically. It's called the TRIPS program, and it is specifically for psychedelics and looking at that. And we have discussed this. So the question is, there are parts of this, we want to stop the onslaught, we want to stop the inflammation, want to improve the energetics, but then you're left with what has already happened. How do you heal what's all the synapses that have already been lost? Now, if you're fortunate, they were only lost chemically, and now you reintroduce the correct things, and now it's doing great. But for some people, the synapses themselves will be lost anatomically, even the processes, and ultimately the cells themselves. So the question is whether some of these low dose psychedelics, which are their whole point is neuroplasticity. Can we add back? Can we improve what's happening? Now, as you know, what's been talked about so far is based on very little data. It's just like, yeah, this might work. There are a few things out there. So I think as part of an overall protocol introduced in the right doses, which we're probably going to start with these micro doses at the right time, which is after you've gotten rid of this imbalance in supply and demand. So now you have the energetics back. Now you have the inflammation down. Now what you want to do is to repopulate those synapses. That's where I think this has some real potential.
Great. So the next question, this could go to a number of you on this panel, regarding the supplements. A lot of supplements are recommended in the program, and whatever do you guys want to say about that?
Who you want to say something?
Dr. Dan's smiling. Yeah. So is Julie.
Well, I mean, the supplements we recommend are targeted and they're based upon your biochemistry. So if your homocysteine's high, yes, it's good. We're going to recommend that you take 3 types of B vitamins. I mean, so all the recommendations that we make, this is precision medicine, are based on your current biochemistry and changing it to a more favorable state to support brain health. So a lot of people do begin the protocol taking a lot of supplements, and over time they find they're able to take less. And that's one of those things that through trial and error, you can find out if it's time to start reducing after you've gotten your biochemistry to a better place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's some history to this as well. So when I saw the very first patient in 2012, of course, my concern was if we miss anything, this person's going to die. So, let's make sure we include everything. We now know a lot more than we did in 2012. So we are looking at, are there things that can be dropped? And by the way, people often find they can get off their antihypertensives when they're doing the right things. They can get off their statin drugs. They no longer need them. They can get off their anti-diabetes drugs, all of these things. So that's one help where you can simplify your life. But as far as supplements, as Julie said, we're looking at what are the things that are going to help your brain. The hope is in the long run, we would again focus mostly on the energetics, on the inflammation. And part of the energetics especially is really about detox. And so, yes, you have to get those toxins out. And sometimes it takes years. You have to remember, you only get the symptoms after a while. And by the time you actually get a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, it's been shown and published repeatedly that there are abnormalities that you can pick up in spinal fluid and in PET scans for about 20 years. Now, the good news is with these new blood tests, that makes it much easier. We should all know our p-tau 181. We should all know. It's just like knowing your cholesterol or your LDL particle number or these things. Now that we understand more, we can have a simple blood test to determine whether we are on the wrong side of that signaling, in which case your p-tau 181 will be above 0.95, or whether we're on the good side of that, in which case it'll be below 0.95. And by the way, as you start to get better, you'll see it start to drop. It takes a few months, but you'll see it start to drop. So just as we address our lipid panels, we should start to address our p-tau 181, because that's a good test for looking at where are you in terms of your brain signaling.
Yeah, and I'm just going to show this real quick. Back to the supplement question. I found the slide, Julie. So this is in order, the B7. So in terms of where we put our emphasis, and as Julie was saying, they all work synergetically. Notice where supplements is on the B7. Supplements are supplemental, and we still hold that for our members and clients and patients who are going through this. So that was just a quick share.
And yeah, so to that point, as a ReCODE provider, there's a lot of clients who come to me, and the focus is, just like looking for the supplement or the medications that are going to help resolve things. And so where we try and focus on, and we've been putting health coaching in the front, is that while we're going to look at your personalized labs and see what key supplements are really necessary and get those started, that really the nutrition, the exercise, the sleep, if we don't have those in place, the supplements aren't going to be as powerful. And so our goal is to look at the overall picture, really get people to be focused on the real importance of these lifestyle factors, adding in the key supplements. And part of this also depends where a given individual is coming in from. So again, to speak to starting earlier, if you start this while you're in subjective cognitive decline, or just doing it preventively, you can really look at your biochemistry and say, hey, I don't need to like throw everything at this. I can see these key abnormalities that a few focused supplements will work on. If you come in and you're in late stage dementia and you want to have family members or yourself turn things around, then sometimes it is throwing more things at that early on to really try and get as much as you can, turning those tables from a supplement standpoint, with the goal, hopefully, like Julie said, that as you're doing this more over time, as your body heals, as you're absorbing nutrients better, as your brain is working better, that we can peel some of those away and find what are the key ones to continue on.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So from Dr. Jan Ventnor, this is for Dr. Bredesen. What is the overall impression on the ongoing use of alcohol and MCI, Alzheimer's, especially red wine, now that we have at least a decade of results?
Yeah, great to have Jan here. Shout out to you, Jan. And by the way, Jan is the one who first told us about p-tau 181 and about the people who were the experts in this and doing the research. So thanks very much for that, Jan. And he was one of the early people who came in when we had the initial training. So as far as alcohol, this is one. In fact, Julie has talked about this a lot, and Aida have gone on and on about this. And I think the point is that there's a lot of con and there's a little bit of pro. The little bit of pro is it's a good relaxant. Yes, it can relax you a little bit. And so, but the cons are many. And of course, it not only does it degenerate your cerebellum. I used to see so many people who had alcoholic complications when I was in training in neurology, and they had trouble with their walking, and they had trouble with seizures, and they had trouble with head trauma, and they had trouble with fighting. I mean, just on and on and on. It was really tough. So in general, you don't want to get to the point with the alcohol that it actually makes you not having trouble with your own cognition. So you don't want to get there. But yes, we realize it's part of society. So if you want to do, a couple times a week with one or 1.5, and Julie, I'd love to have Julie weigh in, because I know she and Aida have talked about this more than anybody. And they've suggested, the dry farm wine, the appropriate type, and organic and all this. So Julie, could you weigh in? Because I think you've done more on this than anybody.
Yeah, this is a big topic for ApoE4 carriers because research shows that we don't do well really with any amount of alcohol. So we're a subgroup that just probably should abstain. But when you look at the research overall, there's this U-shaped curve. So people who drink a lot, no surprise, tend to have worse dementia. People who drink just a little bit tend to have the best cognition, and people who completely abstain for reasons we don't completely understand also tend to have slightly higher rates of cognitive decline. So for that reason, we opted on the brain food pyramid to include dry red wine at the very top of the brain food pyramid. A standard American pour is 5 ounces. So as Dr. Bredesen said, it's, we would recommend 2-3 ounces, just a splash a couple times a week to enjoy, with friends. It's not something that you should do on a regular basis. If you currently have cognitive decline, you should abstain. If you're an ApoE4 carrier, you probably should abstain as well.
Can I make a comment from a coaching perspective as well?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is definitely something we talk about a lot in coaching. Everyone wants to know if they can continue to drink or, eat their chocolate. And most people, they're pretty committed at this point, right? Once they've decided to do this protocol, they really want to do everything that they can to improve. However, every once in a while, there's people where having a small amount of wine or, having a little bit of dessert every once in a while is going to be a make or break thing, and whether they're going to maintain compliance and really stay in. So helping them navigate like what that line is for them can be really helpful. Also giving people a little bit of the social component and those things that help with mitigating stress and creating connection, because it is, like Dr. Bredesen said, a really big part of our society. It does, food does have a social and emotional component. So we really try to, have conversations with people about that, whether it's going to be make or break for them.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective. Good. Okay, so this is kind of a long question. Dr. Bredesen, are you able to see the Q&A? It feels like it would take me a long time. There's one from an anonymous attendee that came in at a quarter of about cognoscopy and overall neuroevaluation. Do you want to?
I see it. I see it.
Yeah.
Okay. Just says, when it comes to cognoscopy and overall perspective, what is the value and critical utility of volumetric brain MRI relative to SPECT, EEG, other? Yeah, such a great point, because all of these things give you complementary information. So we tend to do MRI. What's nice about MRI, it's not giving you X-rays, unlike the old CAT scans that we used to do years ago. So that's nice. And it is highly sensitive, and so it can look at regions of the brain. And this is why I always say, please do it with volumetrics, whether you like NeuroReader or NeuroQuant. Either one is going to give you some idea. Do you have a change? And by the way, we had a patient recently who has posterior cortical atrophy, PCA, which is one of the non-amnestic presentations of Alzheimer's, who went from less than first percentile on her parietal lobe, which is where PCA hits, and up to the 22nd percentile after 1 year. So just dramatic improvements. And she got back the ability to read, which she had lost because of her vision. She got back the ability to work on her computer. So it was just wonderful to see. So that's why we like that. Now, the problem, of course, PET scans will give you more specifics to say, oh, yes, this is actually going to be the pattern of Alzheimer's, the pattern of Lewy body, or the pattern of frontotemporal dementia, or the pattern of vascular. But they tend to be more expensive, harder to get than the MRIs, which is why we tend to use the MRIs. Then SPECT is done a lot by Dr. Daniel Amen, a friend and colleague, a good guy who's doing interesting work on, and he's used these to look at all sorts of different types, for example, of autism and types of ADHD. His argument is this isn't, this is showing it's not just one thing. We've done some of those with him. They're particularly good at picking up traumatic brain injury. They haven't been quite as good at picking up the earliest changes on what's going to become Alzheimer-related dementia. So I think they have their role. But I don't know that they're going to be the number one go-to when it comes to cognitive decline that may be Alzheimer's. I think that the p-tau tests are going to be very helpful, and especially the new one that's called GFAP is going to come out soon. It's already available in research, but it will come out on the market. It is not as specific as p-tau, but is very sensitive, and you see changes 10 years before symptoms. So I think, again, we're all going to want to know if we have a high GFAP, if we have a high p-tau 181 or p-tau 217, which is coming out, because then we can essentially gauge what we're doing and head this off. I mean, this should be a rare disease where you actually go all the way to dementia with underlying Alzheimer's. And it's an incredibly common problem now. 45 million of the currently living Americans will die of this problem. We can make it close to zero if everyone will just come in early on. And Daniel earlier mentioned SCI. 100% of SCI patients that we see get better. It's the MCIs that gets progressively tougher, MCI and dementia. With the trial, we saw 84% of the MCIs getting better, but that's unusual. It gets progressively tougher, as I mentioned. Now, you mentioned EEG. Quantitative EEG can be helpful, absolutely. But again, it's complementary to the others. You will see a slowing. Also, the evoked responses, which is why we're looking currently at NeuroCatch. That may be a good way to go. because you look at things like P300A and B and N400 and things like this, you can see in real time improvements. So I do think going forward, these will all have their place. But to start with, it's a good idea to have a volumetric MRI.
Okay, so Kiki's asking about, is there research ongoing about peptide therapy?
Wow. Yeah, this is a really big question right now. You may have heard the FDA has just come out against peptide therapy. It's going to be progressively harder to do peptide therapy. And I do think there's all sorts of potential for this. And there are certain ones, there's no question, they have huge impacts on the brain. I've always been interested in intranasal, what came out as davunitide, which is ADNP, which is a very potent neurotrophic factor. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here. And Daniel, maybe if you could speak to this, because I think this is a real concern.
Yeah, I have been using some peptides. I mean, there's a variety of them that have some benefits of increased neuroplasticity, improved energetics, improvement in stress. But like you just said, Dale, that yeah, just the beginning of this month, really, the FDA did a pretty big crackdown. So where the pharmacies that I've been using and for physicians prescribing them themselves, it used to be you could sort of stay in the background, but it's sort of like they're, cracking down where the pharmacies won't have a lot of these. And, you can't really prescribe them as well. So I'm still sort of waiting to hear, which exactly are going to be maybe still allowed or not.
Yeah.
But it's an area I've actually, over the years of the practitioner town halls, I've posed that question to you a couple of times as we've gone along about, peptide therapies, and sort of like you said, is there's not a lot of data, or there's really no research on them, and exactly, hey, you add this peptide and you can see XYZ benefit. But I think there's definitely could be a role in the armamentarium. We'll just have to kind of see what regulations allow us to be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, everything from thymosin alpha-1, beta-4, epitalon, davunitide, these all have such tremendous potential. I mean, there's already intranasal insulin. You could argue that is a peptide. It's processed to be a peptide. So, you could argue that that's one. But as I understand it, what the FDA is saying is there will no longer be allowed to be compounding of these, which is going to really change dramatically the access to these things, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, because they're already compounded. I mean, yeah, we still have, the all of the glucagon-like peptides or peptides, right? There's a lot of peptide things that are out there as prescriptions and things too, as we heard people using Ozempic and semaglutide and these medications for weight loss and diabetes. So they're powerful. We know they work. They can be really powerful compounds. And it's unfortunate that, I know there's safety concerns and reasons maybe the FDA is doing things, but it also takes away, something else that can be in our toolbox.
Yeah. So I had skipped over Melanie's question because I thought you might have answered it, but you didn't, about your involvement with PNI, and let's see, are there practitioners at there that are supporting ReCODE, colonoscopies, et cetera, for patients, or is the partnership primarily through continuing this extremely important research?
No, absolutely. So this is going to be a full-on, soup to nuts with the approach that we're taking. And so Dr. David Merrill, who's the head of the Pacific Brain Health Center, which is part of Pacific Neuroscience Institute, is the leader there, and he actually is ReCODE 2.0 certified. He's working with health coaches there. He's working with other physicians there. And the idea will be to bring on more. They have appropriate nutritionists who've been through ReCODE 2.0. So yes, this will be this will be a full-on clinic where we will ramp up the number of people that will be able to come through there. So, and my hope is that this will provide an academic piece. Right now, there are many sites that are practicing this sort of approach. And we'd like to also have a referral center where we can do clinical research and things like that, so that we can make the practice continually better, and the practices can also, find specific follow-ups and make the research better. These two should inform each other. I'll also be speaking to Dr. Lee Hood in just a couple of days. He is the leading researcher in the area of wellness, and actually his group has approached Julie and APOE 4.info before. So my hope is that we will ultimately have partnerships that will cover everything from the clinical side to the clinical research side, the epidemiological side, and even the basic neuroscience side.
Yeah, great. Well, I'd like to move into some of the questions about what I would call, I guess, the business of ReCODE. So a few people have asked, how do we get started? What is the sort of quote career path around becoming certified as either a ReCODE 2.0 practitioner or coach? And Dr. Dan, I thought maybe just starting with you really around, like, what is it like what are the benefits of being a ReCODE practitioner with a full practice, and just share a little bit about that experience for you.
Yeah. I mean, being a ReCODE 2.0 provider has, it's really helped my practice grow. I mean, over time, people, are looking for, providers to work with who have done good training and know will do high quality work. And so, by going through the training, and I believe by going to the Apollo Health site as a practitioner, you can look and see what, to sign up for training and what it takes. And there's, quite a bit of educational modules and questions and answers and things to watch there. The value, one is it does help bring clientele in, and so people will go to the Apollo Health site and then be able to search for ReCODE providers in your area, and then find you and be able to reach out and see how you work with people. There's different modalities and different ways people have that set up, be it doing different one-off visits to programs that last some months, 6 months to a year. It also offers, a camaraderie and a place to continue to learn and exchange ideas. So with practitioner forums, ability to, ask questions and continue learning and collaborate. And what I love about this is that I still feel we're, in some degree, all learning from each other. And what we want to do is continue to improve what we provide so we can really make Alzheimer's disease go away. So the more we learn from each other, the better. So I think there's the business benefit in terms of actually having in some ways it's sort of you're paying to sign up and be educated, but that's your education. But then it's sort of a free referral basis in some way, which is pretty amazing. But then it's really the part of being a community of like-minded practitioners and health coaches and physicians and chiropractors who are focused on this work.
Dennis, yeah, and the beautiful thing really is that we have so many resources for our members. And so when you look at your practice, and Rachel, who's embedded in Dr. Dan's practice and is helping with, implement the Bredesen protocol, you don't have to make this stuff up. Like handouts, guides, there's a plethora of resources for our members. Everything from recipes to how-tos to start here to how do I check my glucose levels and ketones, support groups. There's just so much, and a lot of ways of really supporting people that choose to partner with us and making Alzheimer's not be a thing, hopefully down the road. So Lance put in the chat that the 2 links so you can learn a little bit more about the training if it interests you. Someone was asking about sort of the difference between practitioners and coach training, and coaches we want to have coaches trained who already have a foundational training in health coaching, preferably approved and board certified by the National Board for Health and Wellness Coaches. We make some exceptions because that's a very US thing, and we have international coaches where, it doesn't make sense for them to go through something like that. So we make exceptions for sure. But the idea is that this is an advanced training. In fact, all of the practitioner modules are housed in the coach training as well, at the request of coaches who had a former version of this that was a little more lightweight. So there's a lot to it, but there's a ton of support, and we need more people doing this work in various geographies, and especially practitioners, because that's where a lot of the work is done in person, and we need to have practitioners all over the world. That's my little commercial. What else needs to be said? I'm going to check more questions here. And Lawrence is asking about, is it reasonable to imagine that the Alzheimer's associations of the world will increasingly endorse and support an understanding of Alzheimer's is closer to 36 Holes protocol?
Yeah, it's a great point. The problem understandably, is that Biogen, for example, gave $1.4 million to the Alzheimer's Association, and which turned around and said that the Biogen drug was a good drug, when all of the people who'd evaluated said it wasn't. So I think that there's a bit of a conflict of interest there. I hope that over time that will slowly change, but it's probably not going to happen within my lifetime. So I think, it will get to the point where it'll be clear that this is the optimal way to go. But the data are out. We've published them. It's clearly superior to the drugs, and yet everything you hear is about the FDA approving the drugs. Medicare is now going to pay for the drugs. These are going to be, $100 billion drugs plus, despite the fact that we have far better data with the approach we're taking than these drugs. So, when you have that much money changing hands, it is tough to get people. Was it the Upton Sinclair old quote where he said years ago that it's difficult to get someone to understand something when his or her job depends on not understanding it. So as long as you have that sort of conflict, it's going to be tough to get these various groups to buy on. And I should say also, they all have their own scientific advisory boards that are our competitors that are saying, look, we want to do the drugs, not this approach. So it's going to be a while before that they will sit up and recognize and acknowledge even what's already been published.
Yeah, great. So we need to wrap up, and why don't we just get any final comments from each of our panelists before we close off for the day. And if you have a question that didn't get answered, please reach out to us, and we'll get it to the right person to have that answered for you. Rachel, do you want to have any closing comments?
Sure, yeah. Hopefully my voice hangs in there. It's trying
You're
to go.
doing great.
Yeah, I would just say, I came into coaching as sort of unexpected in ReCODE, but it's been a really amazing opportunity. So if you're considering as a coach adding this, I think there's a lot of opportunity. And, as the word gets out more and more that this is available, coaches are really needed and they're going to be looking for you. So it's definitely, you're not going to regret doing this training, I don't think. And it's really fulfilling to work with this group of people. So again, I'm really grateful to be a part of it and to have been here today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Well, I might as well go to your partner here, Dr. Dan.
Yeah, so I guess I would say, so I discovered functional medicine like 12 or 14 years ago, and then soon after I was in a small clinic, and I had some clients coming in with dementia, and I was searching what is out there to do, and I came across Dr. Bredesen's article, and I was like, oh, this is a functional medicine approach to dementia. This is kind of what I've just been learning about and doing. And it's just been, honed and refined more over the past 6 or 7 years, and been having so many more resources for us as providers, and educating us, and focusing more on the key areas that we need to be looking at to support people. That I guess my main thing is that this is a really rewarding field to work in. And, as a functional medicine doctor, or for any functional medicine providers out there, that you really get to use all of your functional medicine tools in addressing all of these different contributors to dementia. So it's really, you're addressing gut dysfunction and inflammation and hidden infections and all of these different areas that you sort of learn about, separately, and you're really combining all of those in this work you're doing. And like Julia had said, how all these other health and ailments got better after doing the program. I mean, you're really improving, whether you have dementia or not. If you follow this program, you're going to be improving your overall health in multiple dimensions for anyone. So thanks for the work you've done, Dr. Bredesen.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Dan. Julie, how about you?
Yeah, I want to touch upon the question someone just had about why the Alzheimer's Association isn't endorsing Dr. Bredesen's work, and why what we're doing isn't accepted by the mainstream. And to me, that's very frustrating, because 11 years ago, I would have given anything for this information. And we're often accused of offering false hope. But what we have to remember, we are taking the moral high ground because they are offering false hopelessness. When they tell someone there's nothing you can do, there are ramifications to that. The hopelessness that a patient feels. People have taken their lives, and that's something that I think we have to remember and stand on. In the APOE4 community, yes, we would love perfect science and perfect evidence, but in the absence of that, we're looking for a strong signal. And that's exactly what we have, a very strong signal. And we're building more and more evidence because I've lived it. I know that this works. And we just have to keep persevering and spreading the word. And I think over time, it will become accepted by the mainstream, because they essentially have nothing that's improving cognition now.
Amen. Yes. Dr. Hinden.
I love what you just said, Julie. And I would add to that one of the things that you get from the movie, and if you haven't watched it, go watch the movie, is the one thing that in common, that people are taking charge of their health. They're not delegating it to some doctor. And the main difference between people who do ReCODE and people who follow the protocols of Alzheimer's, they line up because a drug might be a little bit successful. But just taking the drug, you are giving your health to a doctor who's going to give you a pill. Just taking charge of your health is empowering. Going and knowing that you can do something in the 167 hours you're not in a doctor's office a week, that's great. And that's the thread that goes through the movie. Different people, different parts of the world. And my highlight of the movie was the Japanese farmer, Sudo, is that what his name was? That he remembered the compliment that his father had given him. But as he lost his memory, he knew that he had gotten the compliment, but he couldn't remember what it was. And that was great. And my most important thing I want to share is, all you functional medicine docs, health coach, remember there are dentists out there that can help you.
Yeah.
Yes. And Dr. Bredesen, do you want to take us home here?
Yeah, so, you know, I spent my entire career watching people die, and my colleagues and I, all neurologists, watching people die of Huntington's, ALS, frontotemporal dementia, corticobasal degeneration, Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body disease, vascular dementia, TBI. I mean, just on and on and on. The area of neurodegeneration is the area of greatest biomedical therapeutic failure. And when you become a neurologist, you accept that up front, that you're going to be seeing most of the people and having nothing to offer them. So for me to see and talk to people like Julie and all the hundreds and hundreds of people who have done well, and the ones who were in the first survivors, that makes my day. That's something that I had not been able to see for my whole adult life, my whole career. And so always interested in what are we missing here? What's the problem? And so I think that, you know, we have this once in a lifetime opportunity. And as Howard said, you know, yeah, it's going to take us all working together. It's the health coaches. We definitely see better results when people are working with health coaches, no question. It's going to take the health coaching. It's going to take the activists. It's going to take the citizen scientists. It's going to take the physicians, the neurologists. Years ago, I was at a meeting where they were trying to push these monoclonal antibodies that ultimately failed. This was gantenerumab and crenezumab, both of which have failed since then. And they said to all of us, there were 25, quote, experts around the room. This is when neurologists would still talk to me before I said I had something to help. And they said, what's the future? And they said, we're going to have to train more people because there aren't enough neurologists to see all these people. Well, the reality is we now do have to have a change in the way that we think about this, the way we are active about it, the way we prevent it, and the way we treat it. With all of us working together, we can, for the first time, make this optional.
Excellent. Well, thank you, all of you panelists. I know all of you are incredibly busy, and to take the time out today to be with our group. And thanks for everyone that came on live. It makes the conversation so rich to have an interaction with you all and your questions that we don't get when people just listen to the recording. So appreciate all of you for feeding us the conversation today.
And Chris, thank you for organizing this. Doing
Thanks,
such a good job.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, we're going to sign off. Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Thanks.